Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. We should always treat others the way we would like to be treated ourselves. One of the great sages, Hillel, Hillel, was asked by a Gentile to explain the entire Torah to him while standing on one leg. And Hillel replied, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your friend." That is the whole Torah. The rest is explanations of how to accomplish this. I think that's a brilliant answer. It really is. We sometimes find ourselves caught up in situations where we're hearing things that we don't want to hear, and certainly we're in the presence of conversation that we're extremely uncomfortable with, and we've all been in the situation where we're looking for a way to get away from that situation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So Noahides should not gossip or tell tales. And one of the things that is so very important about this is that this prohibition of loose speech or not guarding our tongue actually comes under the prohibition of murder. So you can believe that this is a very serious act, and why there is a prohibition against it. So it says that it is forbidden to cause suffering to another through your speech. Now that means to humiliate someone, to embarrass them, or to tell someone something that causes that person embarrassment to hear that. Now by that I'm referring to things as an example, but not totally all these things. But for instance, the person's speech may be inappropriate and coarse. The language could be profane that you're listening to, and or it may be an embarrassing joke that's most inappropriate. I'm sure we've all also experienced that situation where you're uncomfortable listening to this person's story, speech, tale, whatever it is, and you're looking for a really quick exit. Guarding our tongue and our speech is very important. Some of you may recall an old saying. It was particularly famous in World War II, and it said, "Loose lips sink ships." And I think that applies to us today. It's a good way to remind ourselves about the importance of guarding our tongue and being mindful of how we speak about things, and certainly how we speak about others. The sages say that one who causes his fellow to pale in public does not have a portion in the world to come. It's punishable by God. Now, by that it means if you're saying something and it's causing that person the colour to drain from their face, and you can see there's visible anxiety and embarrassment, then that's a very bad thing, a very bad thing. The Torah in Genesis 37 verse 2 warns us about how gossip and tale-telling can lead to more serious consequences. For instance, this reference in Genesis refers to Joseph. Joseph was reporting to his father some negative things, and this led to his brothers discussing how they would kill him, plotting to kill him. Now, even though Joseph felt he was doing the right thing, it did have far-reaching consequences. We also know, of course, that when a tale is told, it It's like Chinese whispers, isn't it? The next person that repeats it adds a bit more or puts their slant on it, or the person listening has their different interpretation. And after 3 or 4 exchanges of that same comment or story, it barely resembles the original source. So we cannot rely on someone to repeat something we've said in the manner that it was meant to be understood. So that's good to remember, even when you're explaining innocent things. I know that from teaching that how I think and say something is not necessarily how someone's going to receive it. So one has to be careful how you phrase things and the words that you actually use. It also goes on to explain that the one who listens to the gossip is punished more severely than the one telling the tales or speaking the gossip. So that is really serious. And there's a reference to that in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16, if you would like to look that up. The Divine Code, 3rd edition, on page 384, I have a copy here with me. It says information or derogatory statements causing harm, anguish or distress, if a person hears it or if that person knows that others have heard it, that is evil gossip. Hebrew language has the word lashon hara. That means evil gossip. So we need to be very careful about what we're listening to, and certainly as careful about what we're saying. There is a prohibition. As I said, it comes under the category of prohibition to murder. That's how serious it is, because you're murdering someone's reputation. You're murdering someone's credibility by spreading or telling tales that really shouldn't be discussed. And often they're none of your business, but there are some people out there who just love to say, oh, did you hear about this? Oh, you know, when someone says that to me, I start drawing back, you know. It's kind of a warning sign to me. Now, evil gossip and tale-telling, it's not only comes out of our mouth, but it can be written as well. And, you know, you look at some media outlets nowadays and it's over the top, some of the things that are said about people. And it's just media hype, but it is actually telling tales and it's gossip. When I'm going to give you an everyday instance here just to explain and put some clarity into what is gossip and tale-telling and what is not. Take, for instance, if you are looking towards employing a new employee, and I've been involved in this in parts of my life, I've had to do this, and so there would probably be a selection criteria for this particular position that, in my case, it was nursing. So there would be a specifically trained person for that specific job, and you've put out a selection criteria and you've got applicants. So you're going through those applicants and you may narrow them down quickly to half a dozen, or depending on the job and how many apply. So then you start checking out the references, and they're very important, particularly when you're in caring situations such as caring for someone's life and their health and well-being. You must be extremely careful who you are employing in that position. Not only have they got to be suitably qualified, that's one thing, but there's got to be certain characteristics that aren't acceptable, and and others that are what you're looking for in that person. So I'm always looking in those applications to find their previous employer, and certainly if they've put them down as a reference, then that's the first person I'm going to call. Now, the fact that the employer has offered a volunteered or said yes, they'd give a reference per phone doesn't necessarily mean it's all good either. So I ring that employer and I explain to them I'm looking at interviewing so-and-so. I see they've put your phone number down for a reference. And I short-circuit a lot of angst on both my part and on the part of the previous employer, because I will say, let me first of all ask you one question. And the question I ask is, if you had the opportunity, would you re-employ this person again? And after years of experience, I've learnt when there's a long pause, I start to get nervous. And they might say, well, and then they start relating some things that, you know, they're not good. Then rather than listen to all that, I've heard enough. When I've heard enough, I say, look, I won't take up any more of your time because I don't want to hear any more of that bad stuff. Thank you for your candidness, or thank you for your honesty, blah, blah. But if the previous employer says, oh, you know, I asked, would you re-employ this person? Oh, we didn't want her to go. She was moving. Her and her husband moved interstate. Oh, she's a gem. She's this. So straight away then I ask some pointed questions, you know, this is the position she or he has applied for. How would that person handle it? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Things like that. So that's all good stuff, and you want to hear that. That's really nice stuff. It might make the difference between that person getting the job and not. So you see the difference there with asking for rightful information in relation to things such as employment, and there are other examples as well. But that just gives you draws a line in the sand where there are some things you need to know in certain situations, and there are other things you don't need to know and you don't want to be party to listening to. The other thing that I would just like to mention also is that there are times in your life when someone may impart in confidence, in strict confidence, they may impart to you certain things that might be troubling them, disappointments they have. It could be things about their family, their private life. There's many things that person has obviously sought your confidence and trusts you enough to want to just have a chat to you. They may not want you even to say anything. They just might want to get it off their chest, you know. Now, it is most important that you don't break that confidence. That person trusted you with that secret or with that confidential information, believing that it was safe with you. So please don't desecrate that. That's a sacred trust that person has in you. So it's not for you to go and divulge that to anyone else. I'm sure most people don't, but there are instances where it does happen. So when someone tells you something in confidence, that's a sacred obligation you have, is to secure that, keep it confident. Now, in the Divine Code, the 3rd edition, which I have here, there is a lot more information in regards to this topic that I'm talking about, and it's in chapter 8, and that commences on page 382. And as I said, it comes under the category of the prohibition against murder. But the title of that, it says the actual title says the prohibition of embarrassing another person through evil gossip and tale-bearing. So there is a lot more in that than I have actually spoken about today. I've just highlighted some of the things that I feel resonate with me and probably you as well. So we are obliged, or we're prohibited from causing any embarrassment to another person through our act of speech imparting a tale, or even listening to one. Now, you might ask, well, how do you avoid listening to gossip? And I understand that's difficult. If you're in a room with one or two people and there's no doorway to get out of, you really have to just close your ears down. Now, depending on the severity of that talk or what it is, you may feel obliged to say, look, I'd like to be excused from this conversation. I really don't want to have that information. I don't need to hear that. And I've had to do that a couple of times in my life. The first time it was a bit hard, and the second time it just rolled off my tongue like it was second nature. There's things I just don't want to know about because A, it's none of my business, and B, I don't even know this person they're talking about. Or if you do know them and you just don't want to hear that sort of stuff. It's just idle chit-chat, gossip. It's evil. Now, having talked about the importance of not repeating anything told you in confidence, and certainly not repeating tall tales people have told you in gossip, there is, however, in this chapter that I explained to you about in the Divine Code, there is, however, some extraordinary circumstances whereby you may have to forward that information on to an appropriate person. Now, this is in circumstances where there may be life-threatening information, or there could be injury or bad actions that may either affect an individual, a group, or a community. There will be that rare circumstance where you think, I have to tell an appropriate person about this. I can't just bury this under the bed somewhere. I have to go and get advice. And you would be well advised to do that, be that your rabbi or whoever the appropriate person is that you need to discuss that with. And that does discuss in this book the circumstances. Time precludes me from going through that right now. I hope this has been some help to you. It isn't a pleasant situation when you are listening or in the presence of people who are discussing someone in a derogatory way. Certainly isn't pleasant when you're privy to conversation that is coarse, rude, profane, in very bad taste. It's not easy. The first time you have to withdraw from it or say something is the hardest, but from then on, first of all, the people that get to know that about you will stop doing it in front of you. And it also becomes easier to say. You have every right to say, I'm sorry, but I'll just excuse myself from this conversation. I don't wish to hear it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. And anyone who has a problem with you saying that, then you don't need to be involved with those people. They're not going to bring any merit to you at all through their inappropriate behaviour. So, if you've liked this video, please press the like button. Please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell to be notified when there's a new video, and you're most welcome to leave a comment. Most of all, please remember, treat others the way you expect to be treated. Please take care, and God bless.